This is a meeting of the dam removal committee of the Warners Pond Task Force, and I'm calling our meeting to order, our second meeting. We've agreed to have rotating chairs, MCs, and I will MC tonight. I think you can all, everyone, we can all see each other's names, right? And we're going to start. Yes, go ahead, Vicki.
Who will take notes? And we should approve the minutes.
Um,
Who was going to take notes? Was it Sven probably?
Take notes.
okay,
Malcolm.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yeah, and then so on the agenda, I guess first good step is to review the agenda. We have call to order, check. Public input, we agreed last time to the suggestion that start with public input so we can incorporate that in our discussions if it applies, and so folks don't have to wait for the whole meeting if they don't want to sit through the whole meeting and then have their 2 minutes. Then we'll have approval of previous minutes. Then we'll spend the bulk of our time on our visioning exercise, leave a little bit of any other time for any other business, and aim to wrap up by 7. Agreed. Any suggestions for changes to that agenda or additions?
Nope.
Great. All right. Then we'll start with public input. Again, I'm operating on my phone, so I hope I can see everybody. And if so, our only member of the public is Enid. Would you care to offer any public comment, Enid?
Sorry, Jeff, we have more, but we'll tell you who they are. But
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I can't see you all.
okay, no worries.
Hello.
I don't have anything to offer at the moment.
Great. Thank you. Jill? Okay.
Jill, do you have any comments to add right now? No.
No, sorry, just wanted to make my presence.
Oh, okay. We
Okay,
also
good to see you,
have Ellie.
No comments at the moment.
And then
All right. Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah,
I don't know why I can't see
No, I
everybody.
have 2 more.
it's probably on a second screen. But
Yeah, I had that before. I had mine like defaulted to hiding non-video participants.
We
That
have
might be what's going on.
Tracy.
Oh, I see. I can put on the people. Sorry.
No, I'm just here to listen. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
and Alyssa.
Okay. If anybody
Wait,
else would,
Alyssa
Yep.
Brown.
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay,
great.
that's
All right.
it.
I don't see any hands. Welcome, Tracy. Welcome, other members of the public. So again, for folks who just joined, this is a meeting of the Dam Removal Committee of the Warners Pond Task Force. Our task in these breakout committees and others on the committee fill in for me is to discuss as a group a vision for what dam removal might look like and how what additions we might want to see as a group, and that's how we'll spend the bulk of the time tonight to provide some of the community benefits that we're looking to achieve through this whole project, and ultimately prepare to weigh those against the Concord Vision long-term plan document. We all received a document from our facilitators as sort of a working template for these work groups, and so folks on the committee, if we want to refer to that throughout the evening, we can do that. But first, we'll get to the next agenda item, which is approve minutes from last round. Do we? I'm sorry if I haven't kept up.
Share them. I can pull them up. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hold on. Where? Oh, share screen. Too many screens here. Okay, can you see?
Good, we're ready.
So this was our these were our minutes. So we had, I'll just quickly summarize. We had our 3 scenarios that we agreed we were going to pursue together. Today, we were also going to discuss recreational requests that might be incorporated. We started a list. We can continue to add or take away from that list. And then questions, we want to make sure we answer with whatever scenarios we have. And that was really our public, and then we went into public comment. So, that was it.
Okay,
Anybody want to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as displayed.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Great. Thank you, Vicky, for pulling those together. The minutes are
Yep.
approved.
Great. Stop sharing.
Then our next agenda item is to discuss our vision. So we had suggested that we each come up with the ideas, what amenities we would like to see in any dam removal scenario, and either mark up a map or somehow screen share with each other, or if folks don't have anything to screen share, that could be described to each other.
Yeah, I
Vicky
can,
said she filed ideas, and we can see if that works here together, or whether we, sort of what our end product is tonight. So I have some images that I could screen share when it's my turn. Malcolm said the same. Liz, if you've had time, how would you like to share your ideas?
I do not have images. I didn't have
Okay.
the best time for.
Yeah, but we could just.
but do you want to say any
Understandable.
ideas?
Yeah, I have a couple of things I can talk about.
Okay. Okay. How about Malcolm? You mentioned that you have some items you'd like to screen share. Do you want to
Sure.
go ahead with that?
Yep.
And let me check again just to make sure I remember from the discussion last time what we all agreed that we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to weigh a sort of a just dam removal and nothing else. So there's not much to talk about there because that's just dam removal. We're still awaiting a 30% design from EA Engineering, so we'll just kind of wait till they give us that base information. Then we talked about a premium version, that all the bells and whistles, sort of not limiting ourselves by cost or permitting or complexity at this point.
Mhm.
And then I think our end product, maybe after a couple conversations, will be some sort of if we feel that the premium is not entirely realistic, something that we feel is fairly realistic. So at this point, I'd suggest we're talking premium. This is the stuff that we'd really love to see at this site.
Okay.
Okay, so with that context for the members of the public and reminders for myself, take it away, Malcolm.
All right. So what I did here is I took the Google Maps thing of Warner's Pond, and I tried to I used the path of the brook that was in the 2022 EA document, just because that was the only thing I could find that was fairly definitive. So the brook is obviously in blue with, it's not necessarily in proportion, but there is a natural pond in what we think is the old kettle up here, and then the stream runs on, brook runs on here, and obviously if the dam from here is removed, it continues on down. What I did look at was from the depth and sediment depth maps that they provided. It seemed to me that with a relatively small amount of work, the stream channel can be made to run at approximately 9 feet deep. obviously in low water, it wouldn't be 9 feet, but the natural depth of much of the stream in its lower section here is over 6, sometimes 7 feet. And there are many feet of sediment that could be removed if we were to look at broadening and deepening this channel. So maintaining a depth of 7 to 9 feet would seem to me to be reasonable. And then this area is already, I think, 12 feet deep. And what I don't know is how much bigger we could make it by dredging some of the sides. And we would need a hydrologist's input to know whether that would just be a wasted effort because it would rapidly fill in again. I don't know, but we know that from what EA said, this pond area, pool, whatever one calls it, will be about 5.5 acres, which I think I read somewhere that's about the size of 3 football fields, which is nothing like the existing area, but it's not tiny. And then I tried from the various efforts to see roughly what the land would look like around about. We would see increased forestation in certain areas, some of which are already wooded. This would be a sort of a wetland deciduous forest as described. It would be mainly in the south. There's existing deciduous forest over here in the east, and this area would be fairly new because it's already sort of middle stuff. And we would go from marsh, a lot of this area would become scrub woodland. And as far as I could make out, the gray area here would be ultimately a sort of an emerging grassland. It would be subject to flooding at periods when the river is full and whatever, but it would slowly convert to first scrub wetland and then deciduous. And my thought was that we want to put in, well, first of all, we want to make sure that Giroux Park is being used adequately. So in order for Giroux Park to be able to access, to create swimming, etc., we need to create a beach at the Giroux Park area that would allow for people to do the things they do on a beach, much as they do with the beach at, say, Walden or at White's Pond. We need a boat dock for people to be able to launch canoes and things if they don't do them from the beach. And it also would enable people to fish from that dock. Deeper water here, there would be a variety of cold water fish potentially in that area. We had also talked about being able to circumnavigate the area using some form of footpath. So this piece running here, the gray and brown dotted lines, some of this footpath exists. I think we would need to improve it. We would need to make it safer. Maybe take out some of the drops and the branches that block it and roots that block it, and extend it round through the farm area around to the edge of the river. And in order to be able to circumnavigate, we would need to put in some form of bridge across the river. It obviously does not have to be... actually, I don't know much about bridges across brooks. It would need to be something that meets all safety standards, and isn't going to collapse under the weight of people. But at the same time, it doesn't have to, it's not a long span, and I suspect that there are ways to do that. Because it would be coming into wetland, there would be a need for a boardwalk. This woodland would be a path, another bridge, another boardwalk, and then the path would continue to here, where my thought would be that the path would, at that point, probably need to continue along the road. One thing I thought, I mean, in terms of wildlife, is we have a good spot here. I forgot to label this, but this seems to me would be a good spot for like a hide for birders and people to be able to observe both terrestrial and avian wildlife. We would have, something like that. And then continuing the concept from what is currently the rough, undeveloped put-in, we could create a path and boardwalk to Scout Island, which may come under the control of the Scout House itself, but it would enable access to the Scout House, to the Scout Island in that way. And I do remember, what's his name? Forget his name. Saying that would be an acceptable option. But I'd also
David.
thought that, well, the river runs fairly close to Scout Island, so having a primitive canoe put in there would be also valuable to them, because they would be able to canoe up the brook and to that put in. And I also thought that we should have at least 2 other boat put-ins for canoes or kayaks. One at currently this is the road that comes down to the boat launch. I think we should have a boardwalk or whatever to get us down to the river. And I also think sorry, I keep calling it a river, it's a brook. We should have a formal boat launch there. And I also think we should have down at Commonwealth a boat launch, so that people can, if they're coming up the Assabet and into Neshoba Brook and they decide they want out, they can take out here on this piece of, I believe it's townland now, or people can put in there and go up the full length. I also felt that one important thing for access, and that's been something we've talked about quite a bit, is that we should have some sort of all-person access to both the brook and to the land. And therefore I put the thought of, I only came across this phrase recently, all-person access. Normally we seem to call it disabled or whatever, but an all-person path that would go from Giro along the brook, passing mostly along what would be the emerging grassland and wetland, all the way down to Commonwealth Avenue. And I think that's about a third of a mile in total, maybe half a mile. So that's what I came up with in terms of my thinking. And what I did do is sort of try to think, I got them, what it would roughly look like. Obviously it's all, so I pulled this from, these are all from streams, brooks, and areas in Massachusetts. I believe this is up on the Sudbury. So when I talk about the emerging grassland, this is, I think, what we would expect to see in those gray areas, with the shrubs and between that and then leading to more of a deciduous forest. And again, looking at maybe this, I'm not too sure where this was taken, but the sort of shrub woodland that we might look at would be something like this, almost certainly with some standing water in places, as happens now. And the woodland, I would hope at some point would look more like this, which is what we're all used to. And then I tried to imagine what the beach would look like, and I couldn't find anything exactly like it, but this would be a beach area. This obviously is a bigger water area than we would have. But if you could imagine the dock going out here, which I had on the other side in my picture, and then water surrounded by trees or grassland. So that was sort of trying to envision something. So that's the extent of the work I managed to do.
Fantastic, Malcolm. Good, fantastic level of detail. And the image is great. Okay, let's hear from others, and then we can think about how we might compile things. Liz or Vicky, would you like to go, or would you like me to go? How do you want to?
Liz, do you want to talk about ideas?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot, a lot of kind of, so I just sort of was thinking about it, you know, like I didn't think about it so detailed. Malcolm, you had that viewing platform idea. I was kind of thinking like several viewing platforms along a lot of the trails. So again, like, this is sort of my like, I wish I had images. I didn't think it's through. But the one thing that I had been sort of thinking a lot about is the history piece of it. And I was reading that Acton recently took out their River Street Dam. It's a very different situation than ours. It was failing. It was sort of, you know, take it out or replace it. But one of the things that they are in the process of working on is kind of building a park around the history of that. And so I was thinking like, oh, you know, there is so much history here. You see some of it on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They have some signage about White Row and stuff like that. So I was thinking like it would be really interesting to like make sure we take into account like the history of the area and sort of do that idea of the signage and like kind of expand on that. I think that would be a great way to kind of make sure we're including some of the history that we really want. And so now like I'm thinking about that kind of like rough idea with what Malcolm just presented. I'm like, that would be cool if you did that along like accessible trail. Like you could have signage along the way, or you can have, I don't know what other kind of park situation you can have, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm sorry. I thought kind of very broadly about this. This has been
I think that's a great idea.
That's a great addition.
That's all I got for now. Sorry.
No, that's good.
All right. Vic, you want me to jump in, and then you
Sorry.
can. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to let you guys know, I did like, you know, they send out that informal survey about people. I did kind of throw out to them, like, maybe it would be interesting to hear from someone in Acton who is kind of thinking about whether putting it to the park. I mean, and maybe that's just something that we could talk to them if we can find a point person there, if it's something that you guys think is interesting. But yeah. Okay, sorry.
Good idea. All right, let me see if I can screen share. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
You see the map? Okay, great. So, like Malcolm, I tried to use this, well, in my case, just this simple sketching app over the EA's image in the back of the alternatives analysis report with their sketch of the water body that would result from a dam removal.
Right.
So, and the icons went on in one orientation, so they're all kind of sideways. But what I thought would be important were a couple things. One is boat access that I show in the star up near Giroux Park on the north end, near the deep hole. So that could be a dock. That could, I think, making it accessible. There's a good example of an accessible dock in Maynard, I think, and we can get a photograph of that. But that's really good to get people access to that deeper part of the pond. And you've got parking at Giroux Park, and you know you could utilize the paths that are there, or maybe there's some additional sort of waterfront access improvements that could be made to allow people to get their boats to the pond. Then on the northwest corner of Scout Island, the larger island in the pond, I've got the canoe, the sideways canoe, and that was the same idea again as Malcolm, of, as we've spoken with David and others, of giving the Scouts access, ensuring that they have water access to Scout Island. And I think those of us who were able to get out on the island with the Scouts saw that that northwest corner did have, you know, kind of their secondary water access on that side. So if the main channel of the river comes close enough, or, you know, a dock could be built there if necessary to get from the land for that access to sound by boats. At the east side, I have a sideways duck. That's the end, or intended to be the end, of Commonwealth Ave, and that was to indicate a viewing platform. For folks looking at this, the white text is just from the EA report. It's not my text, or the white text boxes. So the duck was to indicate a viewing platform, a wildlife viewing platform. It could also be a boat access there. And then the fish down near the current dam site would be an intention to retain fishing access. Again, that I think could go at multiple places, or there could be multiple docks or multiple uses of some of these docks and viewing platforms, but either from the remnants of the berm that forms the current dam, or, you know, somehow utilizing the public access that exists out to the dam, and traditional use of that location for fishing. That would be on the north side of the current dam, access from Commonwealth Ave. And then in pink, again, Malcolm and I are sharing ideas here, and I think others have talked about this, with some variations of a trail that goes all the way around this whole wetland area. My concept uses more of the roads on Laws Brook, the sidewalk, and then Commonwealth Ave, then onto Bruce Freeman at the northeast, along Bruce Freeman where it goes outside the image. And then, you know, it seems simple to me to come straight down the cornfields on the existing dirt road. Then, you know, kind of overlapping with Malcolm's concept in orange, that is a boardwalk now on the west side of Warner's Pond. A boardwalk that would need to be on pylons or something to get across the wettest areas, and then onto this peninsula at the southwest corner of Warner's Pond. That peninsula is owned by the town, but it actually doesn't have frontage on Laws Brook. That's my understanding. It's there's a sliver parcel. It's not a sliver. It's a couple 100 yards. It goes into the woods off of Laws Brook, and it's owned by the Di Giovanni family, who developed those condos across the street and have a few different parcels in town. So, you know, there could be alternatives, like, to my path, overlapping with Malcolm's concepts, like come east somehow and then pick up the Pond Street public access, and then, you know, come along Pond Street to Laws Brook and use the sidewalks. But I thought that circumnavigation, walking on the pond, was you know, we'd heard that several times, and that would be really cool. The idea of running a boardwalk along the stream on the east side past my duck, that could be cool. A lot more expensive to build that additional length of boardwalk, but that could be possible if folks, that was interesting, and if the abutters on the east side, who are closest to the pond, thought that wouldn't be a disturbance in their backyard.
Yeah, I have trouble with that one, Jeff. I think already we have trouble with boaters throwing nips and trash into the backyards. I can imagine what this would look like. So yeah, but we can solve other problems. Yeah.
Great. Well, let me see if my technology can continue here. I tried to share a few photos. So this is a concept of a wildlife viewing platform. This could be considered a fishing dock. It could be lower. It could be higher. This is kind of Cadillac or premium. Doesn't have to be this big, but the idea of sort of a, place where you can go out, have a seat on a bench, put your, rest your arms or a fishing pole on the, on the handrail and hang out for a bit. Good examples of this at Great Meadows on Munson Road in Concord. Also, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services property on Weir Hill in Sudbury, Weir Hill Road in Sudbury. There's a smaller but very nice, kind of viewing platform of this flavor. And as Malcolm shared in his images, I think this is, if not as big, this is the, I think kind of a vegetation condition that we could expect in terms of the areas that still hold some water. This is an image of a boardwalk on pilings or posts that would need to be built over any stretch of open water, but these things exist up on Plum Island. Again, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there's a good example. There's a nice long boardwalk near the Carlisle athletic fields that I saw at one point. And then I'm also familiar, just in terms of permittability, in terms of local conservation commission, etc. I'm familiar with an effort to create something like this, not like exactly this image, but this concept to bridge a wetland between the Battle Road Trail and heading up towards the Thoreau birthplace on Virginia Road. There's a wetland there, and folks are putting a lot of energy into this idea of connecting these two elements of the town's history. But this wetland's in the middle, so there's a concept to build something like this to bridge a wetland. And I know the Delia at least has expressed interest and openness to permitting this type of thing. But the Conservation Commission would need to get involved in that. And then finally, here's sort of a lower water level dock. Could be for fishing, could be for boat access, could be for swimming. There's an idea that actually, this is just popping into my head. A beach is lovely, and of course that's great access for people who are just going to wade into the river, little kids, etc. But sort of a swimming dock, with a climbing ladder or something like that, is something we've probably all experienced. And then you're sort of up and above any muck. You don't need to import and maintain sandy conditions. That's just popping into my head right now as I look at this image. I think that's all I had ready to share.
Well, this is amazing because I think there's a lot of, it's a lot of what we talked about last time and sort of pulling them all together. So I did not do a drawing because I thought we were going to sketch together, but I did do a little bit of research, and I've been on the bike trail a lot and looking around and seeing what's on the brook and what else is out there and what people are using and where the most activity is. I would say I'm happy to take both of the drawings and Liz and what we're talking about and try to pull them all together into one place and talk through it. I can even do it in AutoCAD or, something like that. So it can be real, in a way. One thing that I did pass when I was biking this past weekend, was in Acton. They have what's the Nara Park. And I don't know if any of you have seen it, but I have, let me share my screen. It seemed to me that a lot of what probably was hopeful for Giroux at one point was probably based on what they're doing there. And it feels like we could get there. To me, it felt like a really great example of what could happen at the edge of a brook. And this is their deep water hole, let's just say, that's a man-made section that they did dig out. They talk about, bold, equipment to come in and to actually make this, and it does rise and lower according to water tables and rains and things like that. But what they have there is, and you'll see it right here, is a structure not unlike what we are trying to build at Giroux. And they have picnic tables, and they, I will also pull this over. It was incredibly well used. Both days that I was riding by, they do have a beach Malcolm. So, that is something, that you can see it on the right-hand side here. It's a pretty small beach. They have a boat dock. And so people can come and boat up to the dock. What I like about that dock is it feels more accessible to people who might be in wheelchairs or have just trouble getting in and out of a boat. And I love the idea of a dock further into the water, but I do think that's not accessible to all. So we do need to find a way for swimming for people who may not be able to swim and climb up onto a dock. So, there may be more than one answer, but it seemed to me that this image in particular was such a great example of what we could have. Here between Giroux, the Bruce Freeman Trail, the pond, and the deep water hole. It doesn't look very complicated. And so to me, this was a good example of where we could be headed. The other points I wanted to show, if I could, let me make sure I pull the right image up. I might just have to move these over. Was connecting a few more things, because we've got some things that are already near Giroux and near the dam and near the trail. And so to me, there's an opportunity. Sorry, I'm going to try to, I've got too many windows open here. To me, it feels like we need to remember things like we have a pocket park. Here it is. Right here at the dam in this corner. It's already public land. It's a way to access that section of what would be the brook. We also have the Dunn circle or triangle or whatever it's called here. This is a public park that nobody can currently access. And all of these are adjacent to the water and what would be the brook and the continuation of the brook, and connected to the Bruce Freeman Trail up further. So to me, there's this opportunity at this nexus to connect all the things that we already have. And so to me, Jeff, on your drawing where you have the pink going up Comm Ave, I would take it onto the Bruce Freeman Trail. I would get people across, and maybe we get rid of this roadway right here, connect the pocket park with this other piece of park, make one green space here, get pedestrians safely across Commonwealth Avenue, connect them adjacent to the brook to the Bruce Freeman Trail, and then back to Giroux Park. Like that to me is the circle. And it really does say because we talk about, West Concord, the Blue Way, and, this Greenway, Blue Way, all these connections. And this would be the opportunity with Malcolm's and yours walkways and boardwalks and pulls into Laws Brook on this side and Pond Street and viewing area. Like to me, that circle talks about West Concord in its entirety, because also on the right-hand side of that connection from this triangle is the center, right? Is the junction. And part of the activation of all of that is being able to access the businesses and bringing the businesses into this circle, and also people on the Bruce Freeman Trail into the village. So that to me tells a bigger story of what Envision Concord, I think, was telling us about connectivity and access. So
love it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I love that idea of looking at these I don't know, accessory spaces like the Kenny Dunn Square. It's not I don't know, accessory undersells it, but as you're saying, Vicky, like that needs to be fixed to unpack this, to get people across and walking behind a Shelby-Brook Bakery and along the stream, and then you hit the Bruce Freeman over there, and then you can head north from there. I love it.
Yeah, I was like, when you were talking about that accessibility piece, there's also, I don't know if you guys have walked down that little path that's sort of on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, the bridge piece, there's a dirt path that kind of goes behind.
Yep.
Like you can almost figure out how to connect that. And then it becomes even longer, a longer walk along the, brook turning into the river.
That's
right. That's really
And now we'll connect. This is getting away from Warner's Pond, but that we'll connect behind the park.
Baker Ave, right?
What is the new? Yeah, and then it'll hit the new bridge to Baker Ave, to the shop.
That's right.
There, to
That's
the
right.
businesses.
Okay.
Very nice.
Up.
So I
Um,
think there's
Uh,
there's some cohesion in all of this, and if you guys agree, I'm happy to take this and do the next iteration. I can do it on a plan of all of this and come back to everybody, and we can mark it up and change it, but this will be the number 3 version or whatever it was in our meeting. And then we should talk about, if we're done with this, because I think,
I have some,
actually, maybe we should talk about all the things you can do, because we talked about all the kinds of recreation we want to support. So this would support other bits of recreation that we haven't all talked about, but like skating could happen on that deep portion, right? And you could access it off of the Giroux parking lot. So skating is covered, swimming is covered, access for all is covered, boating is covered. What else are we trying to do here?
so I have a couple of like random things that I wrote down as we were talking. So one of them was like, you know, how do we make sure we have an access point for skating?
Yeah.
Because if it's I don't know if the dock is the right thing, like, and if it's further set back from a trail, like we need to make sure there's a trail that gets close enough to the deep water area that you could actually like skate or get it on in a way that feels almost as easy as it does now.
Yeah.
My other question was sort of around you had mentioned Malcolm put in on the other side of ComAv. I think that's one area, actually, Vicky, you just said that we can utilize Pocket Park and maybe use
That's right.
because I think it is a good idea to have a
Mhm.
put in that area.
We just don't have parking there, but it could be just for people.
Yeah,
Passing
that's
by
true.
and they go park elsewhere or something, and they do that over
Yeah.
at Monument or on Lowell Road, I guess, right? They park,
Yeah.
they drop off and then they park their car.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
And my other
Sorry,
go for it.
I was
No, no.
going to add a silly comment, so carry on. You're being serious.
Oh yeah, so I mentioned it's like having viewing I think it's important that if we're talking about viewing platforms and an accessible trail, you make sure you kind of combine those. Don't have viewing platforms only in less accessible off less accessible trails. And then I just had I just wanted a clarification. So Malcolm, when you were talking about the depth of the channel, you're saying rather than kind of let the channel do what it's going to do as it flushes out, dredge on top of that for depth?
We could. I mean, to be honest, I don't know enough of the hydrology to know whether that makes sense or, you know,
And that's probably something that answers in the 30%, or we might get more clarification. Okay.
right.
Because also my understanding was anything lower or shallower than 12 feet is still going to have growth. And so, you know, it's going to end up being choked and non-traversable, which it is on a lot of Neshoba Brook that I passed on when I was on my bike. It was like, there's no way there's anybody boating this time of year on that piece of water. It's about this deep and it's filled with plants. I mean, there are areas that are filled with lily pads. I was like, wow, that's an unbelievable amount of lily pads I don't think I've ever seen. And so to me, we have to understand what it's going to take to keep this a flowing waterway, right? That's not just an invasive.
Well, and what we talked, right, it's the combination of light and sediment. So as the sediment flushes out,
I think
it's half the equation.
Yeah, well, ish. I think what I'm hearing from the water chestnut world, I'm learning a lot of this, is that those seeds come and plant whether there's sediment or not, and they're going to grow as long as there's light. And so you're going to get all of that plant material. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I if I can just say, I thought, but I don't always hear correctly. I thought they said that the water needed to be deeper than 6 feet in order to inhibit the growth. But did I mishear that?
I don't think it was 12, but I thought 10 is sticking in my head, so we need to look back.
So what we can say is as deep as required to prevent growth.
Although I guess
Invasive materials, right?
But if the low season is when like the water chestnuts are growing, like no matter how much we drive it, it's like 2 or 3 feet.
Well, let's find out. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Let's answer this
I think
question
that's
because that's one of the questions we should, we had put down is like, let's make sure we can answer the question, what happens? Because Also, if it's only this deep and it's filled with invasives, fish are not getting through it either. So if our point is to get fish through here, let's do it. Let's do the right thing here.
Yeah. I think this is an important element of our design, is that we want whatever engineering or construction steps are needed so that there's a defined channel through that, the remaining revealed marsh, so that it's either deep enough or the water's moving quickly enough that it's not becoming choked with invasives. Because when we were able to do the walking tour and we went out to the cornfields and over where Keith had put the canoe, just 100 yards past the canoe, when you looked at over towards the right road to where Neshoba Brook comes flowing in, and it's a good 30 feet across, that was, nice, and there weren't invasives there. It was a nice,
Right.
Kind of fairly swiftly moving stream.
Yeah.
So when we cross, the Sudbury River at 9 Acre Corner or something like that, that's such a big, slow stream that I think that or in Fairhaven Bay or something like that, the water chestnut can really take over on the slower water.
The other thing I would note is that I think where Fort Pond Brook comes in changes the nature of Neshoba quite dramatically, because if you go upstream of the junction with Fort Pond, Neshoba is quite sluggish, but I think we have the benefit of a significant quantity of water coming in just upstream of where Warner's Pond starts, which does help, because I've experienced much the same, Vicky, going up Neshoba, especially up by the Wheeler land, and the put in up there in Acton. They have a range of pieces. There's an old dam that was taken out or that was breached quite a while ago, and that area is just it's just weeds and invasives and everything. But and we also have the problem of Neshoba Brook has Ice House Dam,
Right. Yeah.
3-4 miles up, which affects the flow as well.
So do you think that in this scenario, because we had talked about it at one point about whether there's invasive management, like if, are we doing something where because there's the water milfoil's not going anywhere. And so is this scenario going to require some sort of purposeful invasive management? So we're saying we're going to let the pond come or the brook come through. We're going to make sure it's deep enough and flowing enough so the sediment is getting through, and that it is not going to allow more invasive growth. But in the meantime, until that point, we're going to get rid of the invasives that are there. We're going to do some sort of treatment.
I think that the kind of the bathymetry of that kettle hole will be interesting. Will drive, how much of the floating invasive vegetation will persist there. There'll be that ring around it that's shallow enough and slow moving enough that you're right, some of those invasives will remain, but hopefully we have that big 4.5 acre area that's deep enough where we don't have the invasives.
Which I think it's already the case. Like when we go into that section, there's really nothing growing there.
Right.
So it already is proving that point.
So I guess if we could do something for those aquatic invasives, that'd be great, but obviously they've been problematic and we've read the limitations of our ability to manage those. So hopefully by depth and by making the stream move, there's some control there. I think for the new marsh area, the biggest problem from my perspective would be Phragmites. Purple loosestrife is, it's non-native, it's an invasive. These beetles have had a really good effect in the watershed. I've seen quite a change over the last 10 years. And we could get more beetles if we need to knock back purple loosestrife. But I think we'll have some purple loosestrife, but hopefully it's, it's not dominant. The nice thing about purple loosestrife is it's actually quite attractive. So people might not object to it, but anyways, we'll try to minimize that. Phragmites is a bigger issue. It's big, tall grass. It could just completely dominate, and it sort of completely changes the nature of the wetland and the view and all that stuff. So that would be one, and it can be controlled effectively. But you're right. That should be our commitment from the town is, contract to manage invasives.
Right.
The other grass that Keith mentioned that is already present at the southwest corner of the existing emergent wetland is reed canary grass. That is, it's not ideal to have it. I haven't seen control, be effective for reed canary grass anywhere, because it's less offensive than Phragmites. It doesn't grow so tall. It's just sort of whatever chest height, and it just fits in with the rest of the marsh.
So
If we
Jeff,
could have-
what is the stuff up against all of our edges here? It's very dense and very.
That's called.
tough.
It kind of leans over. It's almost like a. I think what we saw over near Pond Street is called water willow.
Mhm.
The genus is Decadon. I forget the species name. There may be a couple different ones. If I could be, not picturing what you have there, but
Yeah.
that was the primary sort of vegetation that rings the pond, at least down near Pond Street, and that's a native.
Oh, knotweed.
Kind of-
Yeah,
No.
knotweed's the other problem.
Oh, yeah. Knotweed, we definitely want to control.
Yeah, there's
Japanese knotweed,
so
yeah.
much of that right
There
now.
is,
Yeah.
so one thing about the knotweed, and I was talking to Delia about this, or not one thing. An interesting thing about the knotweed and the town is they are trialing a process to help get rid of it.
Mhm.
I cannot remember where Delia said it was. It's a several year process. I can't remember who I was talking to about it afterwards when I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's like essentially they're putting down like screen, yeah, so that like it chokes it up, it falls,
Right.
it chokes it up, all the weed roots get weaker and weaker. So like if that goes well, then we potentially have the problem with that is that's a several year thing, but like
And that's what I was talking about, Liz, when people kept saying, let's throw out that bottom, I don't know what they called it in the report, where they do put, a material
Sealing.
down.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, we can't throw it out because it actually might be a way to handle knotweed against the edges of this scenario. So to me, that is one of the things we might be able to count on to help this scenario be successful, is that we would put material down on the edges between the current land and the new channel.
Yeah.
And I think
pull that
the
from.
other half of this is like aggressive plantings of natives along the way, like
Yeah,
so
of
I
course.
think that but making sure we include that in our what we're talking about, because if we get ahead of that and plant more aggressively, there is hopefully at least something to fight some of these things.
Yeah. And this idea of like pre-treatment of knotweed especially would be important, so that you're not trying to fight it.
Right.
It's natural response to take advantage of open ground, but we're trying to knock it back beforehand. And that emergent marsh, knotweed is an upland species. As Malcolm and we all showed in his picture, and we can all imagine there'll be some newly dried out ground that may be a little damp right now, so maybe some new habitat that knotweed would like.
Yeah.
But that's not one that would take over the marsh.
Yeah. No, but it would take up a lot of other, it's so prevalent right now.
Yeah,
It's
'cause it's
hard to
really
believe it
prevalent
would not be
along-
growing. Yeah.
It's very prevalent, like along where the river where I am, and like when you cross over.
Yeah, and even there before the purple blue stripe, that's all that's over on the other side of the riverway right now is purple blue stripe and knotweed. That's all I see on the other side. It's just taken over.
Well, I tried the mesh thing that you were talking about. I put it down last fall, and in the few square meters that I put it down, it has actually dealt very effectively with the knotweed. It grows up, it comes through, and then essentially it girdles itself. Because it grows so thick, and then it just flops down dead.
Nice.
Whereas the places I didn't put it up, it's as vigorous as ever.
Yeah.
I was skeptical about it, but
That's good. That's good to know. So awesome, fantastic addition, Vicky, that has to be baked into this concept of commitment to to invasives management. We've mentioned that before, and we want to
Yep.
capture that.
That's-
I'd like to just go back to one thing, reaction to what we were talking about, particularly around skating, and then two other amenities that I didn't get on my map, but I just want to have in this conversation. One, the first thing is analogous to an ongoing commitment to invasives management that we'll need from town, we'll need funding for contractors, etc. I would like, I think particularly around skating, a sort of a role for the recreation department to not say like, okay, we put a dock out there, we put a bench, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like, is there, like, I was looking out other towns, and I don't know, I'll have to go back and find my old searches or search again, but towns that sort of accommodate and support open water skating. And on the one hand, you'd think like, oh, a town wants nothing to do with that because of liability, and you know, people are on their own when it comes to pond skating. But that's not always the case, and I think the town could probably figure this out. But wintertime for skating versus the summertime dock or beach, could you have like some nice benches and a place to sit and get yourself set down close to the water? And then in terms of safety, could you have someone assessing the water? Could you have throw ropes? Could you have, just kind of the materials that would make skating
Even a
safe and comfortable?
an emergency button so you could push, if something were to happen.
Yeah.
Like you see in campuses, right? On school campuses, there's all those emergency.
Yeah.
I think it's
And
a
then the
good
other-
idea. Yeah. I
So,
think
yeah, so-
activation programs has to be something we talk about generally, because I think West Concord needs something for children that is not just sports at Rideout. I think the idea that Giroux is our place for a summer day camp, like there could be arts in the morning, and then you get in a canoe and you go across to Scout Island and you learn about trees, and then you can kayak back, and then you run a lap around Giroux, and then your parents come pick you up, or you ride your bike on Bruce Freeman Trail and you go home. Like, to me, West Concord needs a summer camp location, because right now it's all over in Concord Center. It's over at the Hunt. It's over there, and the kids. There are more and more kids on this side of the world, and it feels like this is our opportunity to really be able to have swings and slides and other things that can accommodate the families on this side of Route 2.
Yeah, I like it. So then the other specific thing that is reoccurring to me, but I didn't get it on my map, is a connection of that trail system we talked about to the Wright Road side of things.
Yeah.
And that connection, I think some of us have talked about, existed before the Bruce Freeman flyover went in on that rickety old train bridge. But that's been pulled up, and now you can't cross down at that level, and it's very hard to get down off the Bruce Freeman when you're crossing the Shelburne Brook, because it's up so high at that point. So, some bridge either near Bruce Freeman, which is possible given the abutments underneath where the Bruce Freeman runs over Neshoba Brook. There's these big concrete or granite abutments underneath. A bridge could be built across there.
I'm just going to share some,
sort of,
show me maybe, Jeff, where that is on this drawing here, or on this map.
It's actually out of this frame. It's to the north.
Up here somewhere.
Along the line of the Bruce Freeman. So I'll try to do that. But the other idea, Vicky, if you put that back up, is to
one second. I'm going to bring this one that's maybe further out. Maybe has that zone. Come on. Oh, maybe it's here. No. Huh. What just happened? Wonders. Here we go. Oh, where is it? It's like disappeared on me. This is number 2. Close this one. Sorry, guys. I don't know where it is on my screen.
Well,
okay.
Just mentioning, so that Wright Road is that cul-de-sac. Yeah, that cul-de-sac over on the left there. And from the north end of that, there's a lovely little footpath that goes up to Bruce Freeman.
Oh,
okay, Malcolm, okay, right. So if you, Malcolm, put your mouse on where Bruce Freeman goes over Neshoba Brook,
Mhm.
you used to be able to cross there, and then you'd go through that little meadow.
Mhm.
And then if you go a little bit further west from that meadow, Malcolm, almost like on the edge of Route 2, if you pull the image down a little
Oh, yeah,
bit,
there's that bridge over here, over there.
There, yeah.
yeah, you can walk onto that, and then there's a labeled, or is that the brook? Right where it says Fort Pond Brook, you can walk sort of along that
Okay.
edge on a lovely little path and get right down to Wright Road.
Right.
So
And
what's-
that trail
what's-
goes on along
it goes over there.
Fort
Yeah,
Pond and into the sand pits over here.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So what's missing right now is a sort of a at grade crossing at Neshoba Brook. So anyways, that would be lovely to, and probably pretty straightforward to do it up near Bruce Freeman. The alternative is to do since we're proposing to be in the bridge business, to do a bridge closer to the cul-de-sac, sort of down from the
Which
cornfields.
feels like a shorter jump to me, you know, in terms of the length of the bridge. Because remember, we're trying to make all of these bridges accessible, so it's going to have a very slight slope, but boats are going to have to be able to get under it, right? So it's like this. It's going to be a big bridge.
Yeah.
To get that to happen. Yeah.
Vicky, can I go back to the what you were saying about the abutters on the trail?
Yeah.
And so my question is, if there's a difference between kind of like the wood area that's back here. I mean, I guess I can't quite remember what it looks like behind your house, but like for us, we have the open area where there's the dam and stuff, and then there's that wooded area. And the wooded area, certainly I see nips, I see all that stuff. But it's always very clean. You know, sometimes some kids will leave their fishing poles behind by mistake, but like it's
But
generally.
also, Liz, people go to the bathroom back there.
Well, so my question is
that's
is there,
so not okay.
no, but is there a difference between like, if we're building a trail through, does that then become more like, it's not a place that high school could, like, I think of the woods by my high school when I was in high school, right? Like if there's a nice defined trail there, does that mean that people will not use it? Like the woods?
No, I mean, if you go through the trails in going towards Walden, you know, going all of those beautiful woods back there, they get used for everything. So I think it's hard to do it in back of somebody's house when we have the Bruce Freeman Trail and we have all of these other connectors already done. They're already lit. They're already, you know, people are already using them. You know, this is like a block away. To me, this is like a couple of $1 million to put this trail in. Like, I'd rather put that money into Giroux and the Bruce Freeman Trail connection. It doesn't, I don't know that we need to duplicate a trail we already have, you know, in a place that could be problematic.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, the concept maybe still works, but the location may not be.
Yeah, I think the concept is exactly right, Malcolm. I think we just connect it more to some of the arteries we've already, you know, invested in and make everybody use things that we already have more. I think the more people use these things, the better. It's really amazing that we have that trail.
Yeah.
I think you raised the magic issue though, Vicky. You say it's going to cost $2 million to put that in. I think we knew that we were, you know, designing I can only think of the analogy with a Cadillac or a Mercedes-Benz, but we're doing that, but it's not as if everything has to be done all at once.
No, true.
We could look at a sequence where one thing is done every year.
Mhm.
It just feels like I can't imagine anybody wanting to bite off $5 or $6 million to do everything we're talking about. But if we were to, you know, have say $500,000 worth of work done every year, that's something that, you know, might be acceptable. Or
Maybe.
so we should probably have that sort of plan in mind.
Yeah. And generally, I'd love to condense it more, I guess, Malcolm. I guess, you know, anywhere we can, you know, value engineer down to like, how can we make it everything that we want, but not overspend in any place? So that's all.
Yeah, agreed.
One other bit of reality checking is, I mentioned that road, in terms of that loop path, that peninsula at the southwest, as
Yeah.
I said, is owned by the town, but doesn't front on Losbrook Road. So there's a need to sort of bridge that gap. And then the cornfields are still owned by Department of Corrections and
Right.
leased to a farmer. So who knows what the arrangement is there, but that is something that we can insert into the conversation of the future of all the MCI land, and sort of, we'd have to build public access into that, which I don't think exists right now. So anyways, to formalize that as a trail, we'd need to, we would, just as Malcolm said, both for funding and some of these things will take some time to straighten out.
So,
There
we
was a
have about
question in
20
chat, will there
minutes.
be public comment?
oh,
Yeah, we started with public comment, as we discussed at our last meeting, and that was on the agenda early. I have been thinking though that it's great that we've got good turnout
yeah,
this evening from members of the public, and prompted by some of our thoughts and getting kind of the spirit of this committee work, folks might have other ideas. So if committee members would be open to it, I'd suggest we have a second round of public comment.
yeah, I just want to, before we do that, just two things, just to clean up. So we've kind of gone through this, Malcolm's Cadillac version of what we might be proposing. And I'll take a stab at trying to pull together. If you could both send me what you, just me, not everyone, right? Just me, what you put on the screen, I will work on that. And then we do, maybe for the agenda for next time, we have to talk about that before we take public comment, is we're going to do that second scenario where we're doing the non-dredging version of how much we could possibly amenitize the dam removal, right, for next meeting.
Yes.
Say that again, Vicky.
The second version was how much amenity could we put in a scenario where we're not dredging at all? It's we
We're not
remove the
dredging.
dam,
Manipulation.
don't dredge, and what would you add? Because we know the dam removal is the dam removal, and we're going to come up with something that looks like what it would look like at the end of the day. We have to work on that. But then there's the version of now you've taken the dam out and it's going to do something. What are you going to do in addition to nothing?
Right.
So you're thinking this version, Vicky, to get everything we want, including everything we've talked about today, you're thinking we need some channel dredging, we need some.
Well, we talked about
Manipulation.
manipulation. Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
manipulation
okay.
to get this channel and the deep water area and the invasives and the dock to work, and the access to Scout Island to work. Like in terms of science, you need to do something.
It feels like we're not, like, that's really a question that we have to hope that before we know if like we're going to need to manipulate versus it seems like we won't need to, we really need to see some of that 30% stuff.
Absolutely. We hopefully get it this week, Liz, right? We were supposed to get it this week, so.
So, but I feel like, so that might be an open question about whether or not we really need to talk much about it, or if it's just kind of like, oh, hopefully things are gonna, like,
Yeah.
it's
But we
like,
have to be able to say to people at the end of the day,
Yeah.
this scheme looks like this. It's going to be about 20 feet wide. It will
Yeah.
be clear water. It won't have any invasives in it, or whatever we're going to say, we've got to be able to say.
Yeah.
With that version. And then we're going to do this other version where it's like, okay, we're going to do that, but we're going to add a dock, or we're going to add a viewing area, or whatever we're going to say we want to add to that scheme. And where would those things go, given that it's going to be more of a natural brook scheme?
I wonder whether we couldn't, of all the elements that we've talked about, could we price them out individually? I mean, how
We
much?
will do.
But then we've got the opportunity to say, okay, dam removal on its own is going to cost, I'm plucking a number from anywhere, $1.2 million. For an additional $100,000, we can add, a boardwalk from
That's-
Conav and a dock.
Right.
For an additional $200,000, we can have a beach.
Right, right.
And
well, and I think this kind of gets to like the prioritizing and the, because it's really, because I think we're not doing any costing until after we present, hey,
That's
here's a proposal. So I think we kind of walk through and then we can kind of knock out as we get pricing, like, okay, well.
And the whole task force has to give input to this.
Yeah.
And we have to judge it by the Envision Concord criteria. So as a whole task force, we're able to say, because people might come and say, I don't think we should have a beach if there's no deep water area or whatever, so whatever, like the whole task force needs to be behind it.
Do we have any, so like, I feel like we had an open question around like, hey, we need to research a little bit more into what's going to happen with our aquatic invasives in different, so that's a question that we need more research into, like what is the thing that stops the aquatic invasives, right? So that's a takeaway for, I'm happy to like spend some time looking into that.
That'd be great.
I don't know, were there any other sort of outstanding questions that we were like, wait, do we actually? I think that was the one that.
The one is what is the depth of the water in these schemes? I think, Jeff, you were going to talk to Ors about that. What's the high and the low in each of these schemes? And then what happens to fish? Because I'm not sure I was clear that this becomes a cold water fishery in any of these scenarios.
Well, it becomes a cold water fishery outside of July, August.
Well, is it already a cold water fishery in November, December, January? I didn't know that.
The water doesn't,
because
of the impoundment,
Yeah.
as far as I understand.
We didn't get that information.
Yeah.
No.
October.
They didn't report, Ors didn't report that though outside of July and August.
Well, I think it's because they didn't call it a cold water fishery. He just showed us the like levels, and what he showed us, I don't know if these slides are
He
on.
only showed it for July and August though. He never
Just July
showed
and
any
August?
other ones.
No, I thought I have.
We have to go back to the presentation.
I think Ben's point was that it would become, with fish passage, they would be able to, and would likely go through these colder water areas outside of the hottest time of year, and then connect to the existing cold water streams that are tributaries to Neshoba Brook. And so that allows the populations to connect up and
I don't
down
think we
and
got,
around
I
that.
don't think we got definitive
Okay.
report on that. So that's something that's why I say we need to know what's happening to the fish, because I don't think we have real definitive information on that yet.
Yeah, I've commented to Toby, and I'll answer to the survey we have that we'd still like to see, or I'll speak for myself, would like to see a fisheries
Yes.
expert come talk about what we have and what options.
And for the whole year, because I want to know, like, are we solving for July and August, and is that real? And if we can't really, if there's no way to solve for July and August because the water is going to be so shallow, we're about to see how shallow it gets pretty soon, then is there a solution for the other 10 months of the year, and what is that costing us to do that?
But I think there's good examples with the Assabet, because they maintain it upstream of a certain dam. I don't remember how far it goes up. It is a cold water fishery, but because as you come further down, they've got 6 impoundments on that river. It's only at certain times of the year that it is cold enough for trout down, and somehow or other the trout manage to get back up into the cold areas, or they hang around in deep pools. And if you look at the Assabet, recently there have been 2 years that I remember where the stream would have stopped flowing altogether if it weren't for the discharges into the stream. Fish,
That's true.
find places to be. So even if the brook dries up in a drought, the fish somehow or other manage to find places to still be.
Hey, this is Dan and out of the public here. I just am breaking in here because I don't know how to raise my hand looking at.
Yeah, I'm
You
sorry.
raised your hand. So we'll just say you raised your hand.
Yeah,
But I saw a chat.
think
Could you raise your hand?
Yeah, you can reactions, at least though on my interface here, reactions and then raise hand is an option, but we can keep it informal also. So before we go there,
we have to
final point.
approve the minute. Oh, we did approve the minutes, right? We did approve the minutes. We have to do our next meeting, right? Before we do public comment.
That's right.
We'll get to you in 1 second.
Could I
Out of curiosity, do you guys?
Jeff, can you send me your presentation, because I need to put that into the minutes.
I will do that,
Yes.
and I'll send it to you individually, and I'll send it to Vicky individually
Awesome.
Thank you.
follow-up. Thank
And
you.
I'll send you the thing, Vicky.
Okay. One final thought, that as I look at our charge to sort of think through our concepts through the lens of the Envision Concord criteria, our criteria, there's a section on kind of visual aesthetics, and that's subjective, obviously, but I have come across some, visual assessment models that exist, and I will look more into that, and it's something maybe we could bring to the larger group about. One person could say this is going to be beautiful, one person could say it's going to be horrible. Is there something that some framework that people use to assess those things?
I also was just thinking now might be a good time of year to take images both sort of upstream and downstream of what the low water is going to look like.
Sure.
I mean, like I was looking at the brook yesterday. It's like fish in a barrel right now downstream. It's kind of sad looking, and so I'm curious what it looks like upstream. So,
There are areas that look like that too.
yeah, I'm happy to try to
Okay.
do that.
Good point. Do we want to go ahead, Liz? Sorry.
The other thing I was going to say was, we will. Well, no, I'll wait till scheduling for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's gonna be a meeting, a big meeting. The
Let's get
task
a
force meeting
calendar.
is on the 13th, just FYI. So if we want to do the second version,
Right.
we need to do it before then.
Okay,
Okay, unfortunately Sven doesn't get a vote, but what do meetings late next week look like for people?
I can do the 7th, 8th, and kind of this time on the 9th.
yeah, I can do any of those.
The 7th is preferable for me, although it's kind of quick work, but we should keep moving. Liz, any thoughts?
I can do the 7th. I just, I'm just trying to think of that timing. I might have to do it slightly later if that's okay.
What time works for you, Liz?
Like 6:30 would be ideal, but I can probably make 6 work if I have to.
I can do 6:30 and to 8.
6:30 is
Yeah.
fine for me.
Okay, thank you.
Great. The 7th at 6:30. I'm glad that works for everybody, and hopefully it works for Sven.
And then do we want to do that in person or this is actually, well, I don't know. What do you guys think about in person versus everyone on Zoom? Or should we wait to see if Sven would need to do Zoom?
I'm very happy doing this online, but
Yeah.
Either works for me. This was nice, but either work.
Yeah, this worked for me too.
Okay. Okay, let's do that.
so Sven doesn't get a vote. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does somebody want to put
Great.
the agenda
Okay.
together and get it published, or do you want me to do that again?
I vote for you, Malcolm.
I vote for
I
you.
hate you, Vicky.
Thank you. I will. Who wants to MC next time?
I'm happy.
can-
Okay, go for
Okay,
it.
sorry.
I can take the minutes next time.
Excellent.
Okay. Good teamwork. Thank you all. All right, we'll move to our second bite at public comment, and we're still trying to wrap up by 7, so if folks could stick to 2 minutes, that would be great. And because Enid figured out the hand raising, I'm going to go to Enid first.
Okay. First of all, I think you guys have done a great job. I'm very impressed with everything you've done. But I have a couple of questions. Looking at the diagrams that you put up, I see this blue line that is presumably what's the brook after the dam comes down. Do we actually have any information about it? Do we know how wide it is? Do we know how deep it is?
I don't think so. I think that line is in the alternatives analysis based on sort of looking at aerial photos at certain times of year and sort of seeing where there are the least invasive plants kind of there. And so I think that is a sketch for me.
Well,
I think that's all we know.
It seems critical to know that,
To know what the end product will be, you mean?
what it's going to look, yeah.
Yes.
The channel.
And I know that John Coleman has said that there would be times of the year that it would be impassable. You would
Right.
not be able to get a boat down
Yep.
there.
Yep.
At one of the public meetings, my husband, Mark, went up to the EA engineer and asked him about the area outside of Giroux, that the deep water, okay. And he asked, would that not silt up as well? And it will. The answer was yes.
Mhm.
So I don't know how that's going to be managed. If that's the only deep water we have left, it's going to silt up anyway. So it looks like that's something that needs to be figured out. So, and that's all I have to say. I'll lower my hand.
No, that's a good question. Like, will that
Thank you,
area
Anna.
fill up with sediment, right? So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
are we doing about that? Yeah, good question.
I mean, if we're planning on, and by the way, if you're planning on swimming there, you need to know that there are leeches in the water.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
It's
there's
it's a duck, yeah, it's a duck muck
I
bottom.
heard
and
it from
it's
Enid.
full- Yeah, it's full of leeches, and I've been in it, and I know.
The information just went full circle.
But maybe if we dredge, we could dredge some of them. Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, you'd have to
Swimming
dredge
in
a lot.
nature.
I know that one of my neighbors said that back in the day, they used to put sand down on, and make their own beach in their backyard. But maybe the water was deeper then. I don't know.
It was less water.
Thank you for joining in. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, I just have, I guess, 3 comments and I'll be quick. First of all, I really applaud you for doing the amenities. I think there are some really good ideas out there. I will note they probably will work just as well with the other alternative, if not better. And just another comment about the amenities is that part of the reason we're here is that a alternatives analysis report was done that looked at a series of wetland function values and came up with a scoring system. If those amenities had been included, this probably would not have been the selected alternative, just based on price and considerations by recreation and so forth. So just pointing that out. My second comment, which is kind of a bigger comment, but Enid touched on it, and I guess a few others have touched on it, but I think it's, in looking at these concepts that you have, I think it's really important, and it's really incumbent upon the town, but it's important for you to get a much better sense of what the predicted physical conditions are going to be.
Mhm.
And that has not been done to date. We'll see what comes up with the 30%,
Mhm.
but to give you some specific examples, right now, the impoundment keeps the water. So when you walk out to Warnish Pond, it's the impoundment keeping the water about elevation 119. It's a little shy of that. But a reasonable expectation of water level in a stream channel, typically, if the dam is removed, is around 115, plus or minus. So when you are considering things like the pond right now, within the limits of the new pond that's being shown, that 4.5 acres, the bottom elevation is around 113 down to around 1.8. So now think about that in terms of a water level at 115. And during like August low flow, that will go down lower. So it is a very shallow pond.
Mhm.
The wetlands right now, it's about an 86-acre wetland system. Of those 86 acres, according to the federal government, about 85% plus or minus exist, either are created or modified due to the impounded water level. And I have yet, we'll see what's coming down the pipe, but I have yet to see an actual wetland impact evaluation. What I've seen are schematics that imply that the extent of the existing wetlands are going to remain. And when I look at like Malcolm's photos and stuff like that, it's clear that there's an impression of what's going to exist. But I will tell you, and I'm not saying this off the cuff, if you look at the existing topography, if you look at the anticipated groundwater elevations, if you look at the anticipated stream flow, and you look at that reduced water level, in conjunction with the fact that the federal government's telling you that it's, most of those wetlands exist due to the impoundment, it really brings into question, are we going to have 86 acres of wetlands? And if you go back and look at the historical maps, they would not lead you to that conclusion. So I'm talking about pre-colonial going back to 1830s. So I think, for you to confidently move forward in looking at these options, I really encourage you to push back on the town to say, well, tell us exactly what you think this is going to look like. And don't gaslight. It's just show us the friggin' numbers and how you got them, right? My last comment, which is, I think I understand what the goal of the subcommittee is. And it sounds like it's very tied to, the long range planning for the town. But listening to you guys, it sounds like sort of we're team dam removal and how do we make it better? What I'm not hearing is a real assessment or discussion as to whether this is the best alternative.
That'll happen, Dan, in the bigger task force. The task force is gonna come back together and look at no action, maintain, dredge, how much do we dredge and what do we do? And then do we remove the dam? So we're just one of 3 scenarios
Yeah.
for movement.
And
And at the task
But
force,
you
we'll
do
put
see where I'm
together-
coming from. I mean, the reason
Yeah.
we're here at all is because this was the selected alternative.
Right.
And if this alternative
I know.
doesn't work on its merits,
I
in
know.
particular, the amenities you're talking about are probably $1 million minimum.
So we
So,
should probably leave.
It kind of questions how we got there in the first place, right? And we're spending a lot of money doing this. I'm just going to leave you with this closed comment. Massachusetts is one of the few states that actually defines cold water fisheries. So you can just get online and Google it. They'll show you which streamways are. I personally don't think it's that relevant because I don't think it's relevant to the fish species you're looking at, even the migratory fish species that we want to get from the MAC. So, I don't think that's a driving issue, but I just want to make sure you know that kind of data is really available
Great.
to you.
So I
Great,
think.
thanks for those comments, Dan.
Starting a meeting, because Dan, I feel like, this is a good point you raised. So the, point of the charge for each task force is to design sort of the best of what we can do for this without sort of looking at the other ones, so that when we come together. So that is why kind of when you're in these meetings, you're seeing us, like you said, be like the, yay, let's make the, because that is sort of our charge, is to make the best. But I think it's probably worth kind of reiterating it that at the start of every meeting, because there are different people coming in and out. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So
Yeah, and Liz, you said the charge of the task force. I know you meant to say the charge
yes.
of this committee, right? The
Yeah.
committee of
Like the
the
charge of the,
so we're all on the same page.
Although
It's worth
Oh, there are 2 more
Devin,
hands. It looks
Dan.
like there's another hand up.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
Great. I'm trying to track
you.
this on my phone. So if
Tracy.
folks want to
Tracy has.
jump in, go ahead, Tracy. Yeah.
Hi. So first of all, thank you. I know all of you, not just tonight, but many weeks, many nights, you've dedicated so much time to this. As I listen, I think I'm like trying really hard to fight like skepticism in my head, where I imagine there was a team like this that sat down and dreamed up what they wanted for Dro and Warner's Pond, and expectations were set. I think, Enid has sat in on dredging meetings, several years ago. She's been doing this for a long time. So even as all 3 groups are doing this, I do get nervous about a lot of the things that you talked about. When I've watched meetings, they've already been given, the red light on Warner's Pond, like no fishing docks, no swimming, no access to the water. So I do get fearful of getting excited for some of these ideas, even though I am excited for them personally, but I wonder about in reality, what's possible. The other thought I had is just that Nara Park, I don't know if it's 9 acres. I don't know how big that pond is, but just as you think through like what 4 acres left over would provide for our community, just thinking, do we need to dredge a bigger deep hole for this option? What would it be? How many users would we anticipate? And then therefore, like how big does that deep hole and the size that it is might not be big enough. So there might still be like dredging, as you guys were talking about, as part of this plan. So, but thank you for the work you're doing. I'm impressed that you're able to work through what I'm sure is a lot of cynical thinking on your part too. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks everyone who attended. Thanks fellow committee members for putting in a couple hours on a Friday night, and hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.